Hello, my name is Dean Contover, and this is the Current Buzz. Thank you for watching today. Today we have the honor to have Frank Phillips. He was a reporter for the Lowell Sun, and now he's a political reporter or correspondent for the Boston Globe. And thank you for coming in, and just after the election, so it's kind of great that we have you here. We can talk about the election.
It's my honor to be here. This is my old stomping grounds as a reporter. I love this area.
Did you cover Chelmsford?
I never covered Chelmsford directly, but it was always part of the Lowell Sun back 45 years ago when I started.
Right. How did you get hired by the Lowell Sun? What happened? I mean, this was 45 years ago. And how did you progress to?
Hey, listen, I was a kid of the '60s, about the war and civil rights, and my wife and I went in the Peace Corps, and I came back, and I said, geez, I'm going to do something there. And
where were in the Peace Corps?
I was in a little country called Lesotho. It's on just south of Johannesburg, surrounded by South Africa.
Oh, Lesotho, the little.
Yeah, it looks like Lesotho, but
there's two little countries there in South Africa.
Swaziland and Lesotho.
Lesotho, okay.
Yeah. I came back.
L-E-S-T-H-O.
but it's Tho, not Tho.
Okay.
Lesotho.
Okay, interesting.
Anyway, I came back and I was going to go to law school in the middle of the winter, and somebody said go get a job in newspapering, and eventually ended up at the Lowell Sun. Walked in. I said I couldn't type. He said come in Monday and you'll learn. I said, oh, geez, that was great. And
wow.
Walked into an old newsroom that was full of great characters like Charlie Sampis and others, and he was Jack Kerouac's brother-in-law. And wow,
Yeah, right.
It was a real news operation in those days, and a real newsroom.
Right.
And I didn't think I was going to make it because I couldn't read the keyboard. They put me on a typewriter that you couldn't see. All the keys had been worn off.
Let me ask you this question: where were you originally from?
I was originally from Philadelphia, but I have deep Massachusetts roots because my mother was brought up here.
Okay.
She's from Walpole.
Okay.
And her family had been very deeply involved in Massachusetts politics for going back to the 19th century, early 19th century.
So they said you're the political reporter for the Lowell Sun. And at that time, was it Kerry or Tsongas involved?
Tsongas. I was
Paul Tsongas.
Just beginning to get my feet get oriented as a reporter in Lowell, and this got a phone call and it said, "Hi, I'm Paul Tsongas. I'm running for the city council, and you were in the Peace Corps and I was in the Peace Corps. We should get together."
Wow.
And he was running, and I covered some of that campaign, not all of it. I did a lot of the school committee race and people like George Kula Harris and all that.
Oh, yeah. George Kula Harris.
And that's where I cut my teeth. And then he won, and I became the City Hall reporter. And, he was a young political newcomer. He was trying to learn his craft, and I was trying to learn my journalistic craft. And we were, kicking butt at City Hall. There was the old guard was there, and we were young, obnoxious kids, tearing down the old fortresses around and the contracts and overtime, and had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was the best time I had in journalism was at the Lowell Sun, because I was learning a lot of good people like Ken Wallace, who was a dear friend of mine, worked very closely with, and I loved Lowell. I loved. Most young reporters used to come in and immediately want to get out within 2 years. I stayed 10 years in Lowell because it was a lot of fun. And I just had a ball.
When I remembered something, Paul Tsongas was also in Ethiopia as a Peace Corps volunteer in those days, and that's where a lot of people did at your age, going to the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
So you were a reporter, and you sort of grew with Paul Tsongas, I presume, when he was Middlesex County Commissioner.
Well, he was on the city council, and then he decided in 1972 to run for the county commissioners. And at that point, we had become good friends.
Okay.
My wife and I and Nikki got to know them. And I said to my editors, I can't cover this guy. I shouldn't be writing about this guy anymore. It was even earlier than that, because I shouldn't be in things. So when he ran for county commissioner, I did not cover that race.
I see.
And then we ran for Congress in '74. And that was after Kerry. I covered the Kerry race, which was very controversial.
John Kerry,
John Kerry.
Senator and Secretary of State.
Presidential nominee. And
yeah, he ran for Congress in the 5th, wasn't it, at that time?
It was the 5th district.
Yeah.
He got his butt kicked here because he'd come in and won a very crowded primary among Democrats who wanted to, dying to get that seat for
no doubt
since they were kids, and
yeah.
he just waltzed in and brought all this money in from out of state, and
that's usually how it is, isn't it?
Yeah, and then he won the nomination, and everybody went with Paul Cronin, a little-known
Republican from Andover.
Andover just got defeated as rep.
Yeah,
and he won.
And then Paul defeated him 2 years later, right?
Paul came back, local guy, same positions that Kerry had, because the Lowell Sun kicked the hell out of Kerry.
Right.
And I was there. It was a tough time to be there as a reporter, because they were over the top, kicking around Kerry, calling him a communist or just about everything else.
Right.
And Paul ran on the same platform, and they let him alone. I don't think they endorsed Cronin, but they didn't go after him because he was a local kid.
Right.
Tsongas Cleaners, his father, Themo Tsongas.
Yeah, people knew him.
Yeah, they knew him. He was a local guy, and he'd done some great stuff in the county.
And I don't think they wanted to offend the Greek American community at that time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, very strong. Greek American. I love the Greek American. At Olympia, I used to hang out there.
Still there.
Charlie Sampras would tell me all about it.
Yeah, still there. So what was the leap that you went from the Lowell Sun to the Boston Globe? What was that all about?
Oh, I left the Sun to go to the Boston Herald American.
Okay.
Which were owned by Hearst, and eventually the Boston Herald became a tabloid, and I was owned by Murdoch. I'm a Murdoch-trained tabloid reporter, I like to tell people.
That's interesting.
But
I didn't know that.
But I credit my experience in Lowell, understanding my 10 years in Lowell, of understanding basic politics in Massachusetts, understanding what drove people to do the things they did, political people, and sort of all the ethnic fault lines, the old battles that went on. I absorbed it, and when I got to the State House, I understood it. You could
smell it?
Smell it right away. I could figure it out right away. And the Globe was hiring people from Harvard and the Ivy Leagues to come up and cover the State House, and I was there with the Boston Herald tabloid particularly, and I was just running circles around them because I knew I could develop sources, I could speak the language, talk the talk. And
people don't realize Boston's very ethnic.
Very
ethnic, and that's how it went in neighborhoods.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I learned that in Lowell.
Yeah, exactly.
The French, the Greeks, and the Irish.
Yeah.
It was explained to me early on, and then I said, what? And then I understood it. Every time there was a fight for the Housing Commission post,
right.
It was great, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was
interesting.
wonderful.
But people don't understand. There's an ethnic grouping, in Charlestown and the North End, and the South End, Dorchester, and
that's
West
all
Roxbury.
changed. Dean, that's also changed.
Yeah.
Charlestown is a yuppie place, as we would call it in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
Very upscale. Used to be
same with the North End.
Yeah. Used to be a bank robbery. All the cops would go over to Charlestown looking for a perpetrator.
That's right. It's funny that you say that. I mean, because what they would do is block the entrances of Charlestown and wait for the guys to come back, right? They would drive up 93, turn around and come back and go to Charlestown. It's an interesting
Not
place.
now. I mean, houses are going for $2 million over there.
Some condos are going for $2 million.
Just amazing.
Can you believe that?
That's what Boston's become,
Yeah, it's almost like a New York to a certain degree.
Yeah, it is.
Big money coming in. So, how long have you worked for the Boston Globe? You're still part-time, right?
I was at Boston Globe since 1987, so,
Wow.
And last summer, I finally, I took a buyout, but on the provision that I would still be associated with the Globe, and I'm free to write, and I have my Globe coordinates, and, I'm free to do what I want. I'm not day-to-day journalism with them. And
how is it to be a reporter these days? Do you get any feedback from the full-time reporters, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm there. I mean, I'm still, very associated with the reporters and what I do there. It is, you know, it's tough. It's everything is sort of whittled down. And,
That's right. You moved from Morrissey Boulevard to your new location
downtown.
Downtown,
beautiful place.
Is it?
But the cutbacks continue. I mean, just the Globe is again having some layoffs. This week.
Oh, is that right?
And it's been tough. The newspapers are pulling back. The journalism, I see, you know, still good. They've adapted, but the problem is it's digital news operations now. It's not the newspaper. And people are going to the digital website more than ever. I'm doing that.
Right. I find that too, that I'm doing that.
Yeah, but there's no revenue there. You cannot, you know, the money is still in the advertising in the paper. That's diminishing significantly.
Right.
It used to be classified ads. That would be the big money maker for the paper. For the Boston Globe, that's how they won out. They were the dominant classified ad paper. That's where you went and find out for jobs and to solicit employees. And the Herald lost it, and that's why the Globe ended up as the powerful newspaper that it was. You said was. That's an interesting term. Well, it still is a very dominant news operation, but nothing like it was up until about 10 years ago. People used to shudder, you know, you wrote something in the Globe, the ground shook.
Yeah.
I used to see that. And compared to when I was writing for the Herald and competing against it, it wasn't always, it's just the Herald, you know. Yeah. That's the Herald having fun. Or even if you really did a good kick-ass story, you'd do that in the Globe and people, oh my goodness, you know.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of power.
I remember this about the Globe when I lived in Boston in regards to the State House. I was told that that they were fearful of the Globe is here, 4 words. It didn't matter whether it was a reporter or the newspaper. The Globe is here. That's what I remember distinctly.
It still has some influence. I mean, if any news outlet does, it's the Globe. The problem is it's diminished. Our State House Bureau used to be 5, 6 people in it. There's 2 people in there now.
Okay.
And they're way overworked. But we cover the news differently too. We do more broader stories, bigger stories. We don't do the incremental, follow the budget, go to the hearings. That's what we used to do. We used to be the paper of record. Now we're the paper that drives the news. We want to, get the bigger story.
Well, papers always did drive the news, didn't they? I mean, they were considered the fifth estate.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And basically they were honest more times than not. In regards to telling,
no, they still are.
They still are.
Well, the Herald is now a very diminished product.
Right. Well, isn't it also connected with the Lowell Sun, Fitchburg Sun?
It's really been diluted. It's been some private equity guys have gotten a hold of this paper, and they're running it on a real shoestring.
Well, that's what they do, private equity. I mean, once they take over a paper.
And they make money doing it. I've known people who have access to their books, and and they make a lot of money just by putting out this product as it is. It's amazing. I'm shocked how much they can do. But they do it because they don't have anybody. It's all combined work. They've really slimmed down the workforce.
Right.
And we've slimmed down our workforce, and we continue to do it. But I don't know what the future is. We have 100,000 digital subscribers, and we need 200,000 at the Boston Globe.
Well, that's up to people in the audience to download the Globe. Is it the Globe or is it just Boston?
BostonGlobe.com.
Okay.
And we need 200,000 to be profitable.
Well, there are probably 200,000 people watching this show.
I wish.
So you're good.
Okay, everybody sign up for it, because
there you go.
That will keep journalism, and as we know, journalism is at a critical point.
Right.
It's holding our elected officials, our public officials holding their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And we need that more than ever.
No doubt. Let me ask you a question. New York Times considered Washington Post. Did you ever think of going there? Were you ever contacted?
First of all, you had to have the chops, journalistic chops to even consider that. But I never did, because my wife and I settled here after the Peace Corps, and we wanted to raise a family here. And I wasn't going to pick up and move around. That's why I stayed at the Sun so long. And the Sun was a very vibrant newspaper for the years I were there. It was big, and you had a lot of impact in your area. I went to the State House for the Sun for a period, and it wasn't that much fun, because you were a small fish in a big pond. Mm-hmm. You go back to Lowell, you're a big fish. And so when I went to get to the Globe, again, you're a big fish.
Right.
I didn't want to go to Washington, and again, you're a little fish. You don't have that kind of impact, or people aren't reading your stuff. So I always wanted to stay in Boston, and the Globe was the pinnacle of, and it is. It was a terrific newspaper, and it is still a very good newspaper, struggling to find out how to make it in the digital age.
How do you create sources? Besides talking to me.
Well, you have to like the people you're covering.
Okay.
You have to genuinely be interested in who they are. I find that's what I'm very curious about people.
Right.
And I like to talk to people. I like to know who they are, where they come from,
right.
You got to be careful about it. But I love people's ethnicity, because I learned it in Lowell. You're French, huh? Oh, no kidding. That's interesting to me. Where'd you people come from in the provinces? You have something to say.
That's interesting you say that, but going in the military, they teach you the umbrella that you're an American.
Yeah.
And it's a whole different concept.
No, they are American.
Yeah, they are, but it's a whole different concept. People say, I remember taking a college course in Boston, and he was from Ireland. He said, these people come in and tell me they're Irish, and what am I? It was really funny. I thought it was hilarious, because he was from Ireland. And he was saying that, because they were Americans saying they were Irish. But that umbrella, which is good. I don't think you get the ethnic that much in the other parts of the country as you do in New England.
No, you probably don't. Maybe in some of the cities like Chicago and a little in New York, and I think some of the urban areas, it's left over. But it is big here, and it flew me. That's the only way to understand Lowell politics, particularly back in the early 1970s, was to understand the ethnic fault lines better than anything.
It's interesting that you say that, because I didn't realize the French Canadians voted with the Protestants
and the Republicans. Oh yeah, because the Irish had the Democrats.
And the Irish and
the Greeks, they were Republican too.
Yeah, they were Republican and some Democrats.
Yeah, Paul Sangus was he went off to an Ivy League, got educated.
Oh,
thought he was a liberal then.
That's right. Yeah. So that was unusual. Technically, they are conservative, the Greek Americans in this area. Yeah. But their children have become more progressive.
As liberal as Paul Sangus could be, the conservative Greek, wealthy conservative Greeks got behind him. That's where he got his money.
It's interesting.
When he ran for the Senate, he was out in Worcester talking to conservative Greeks who was, go for it, Paul.
Yeah. It seems that they support, whether you're Republican or Democrat, they'll support you down the line.
Yeah.
I think I recently read there was a Greek PAC.
Is there?
Yeah. I think you go online, there's a Greek PAC. And you'd be surprised people with non-Greek names that have Greek ancestry or half Greek or something like that. So it's really interesting, So what else can you remember about being the reporter, the funniest thing and the saddest thing that you saw as a reporter?
The saddest thing was when I was working with the Boston Herald. I was the one person at the State House Bureau. Peter Lucas was actually the columnist at the time, but he
writes for the Lowell Sun now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. He's great. Peter is a good friend of mine for years. And he was the guy at the State House back when I was here in Lowell. He was a big guy. Anyway, I got this phone call from my wife, and he said Paul called me. I don't know why he called her at home and said he's retiring from the Senate. He's not going to run again, and that there's an illness. And I just remember, what? He says, you're not to tell anybody.
Wow.
Now, you tell a reporter that.
I know.
First of all, there's a vacancy in the Senate seat. There's a huge, and it was at the end of the day. I was just walking out of the office. I came running. I drove home. I live in Concord.
Right.
Drove home. I said, what is this all about? What's going on? And then I got a call from an editor at the Herald and said, there's some rumor that Tsongas is going to leave the Senate, or you're not going to run again. Do you know anything about it? I said, I know all about it. In fact, maybe I had gotten a hold of Paul. And,
right.
And he said, you can't tell anybody. And when, okay, what is it? And so it was very sad. I mean,
right.
I'd seen him rise up, come up.
Right.
And all of a sudden, and he confided into me it was
right.
cancer, and I was stuck. What do you do when your good friend, has this, but it's the biggest story in the state.
Right.
And I was caught between my journalistic instincts and my personal relationship with him, and I had to maneuver that, and I was very sad and I was crying almost, and I had to run back into Boston, try to figure out what's going on, and we broke the story. I said, that he was leaving the Senate. We didn't say why.
Did you think that if he didn't have cancer, he had a good shot to become a presidential candidate?
That's what he was going to move towards, yeah. And he did become a presidential candidate, thinking that he had beaten cancer, and it obviously came back. And he was also up against one of the shrewdest political figures we've ever had in this country, is Bill Clinton.
Right.
And Bill Clinton took off the gloves when he saw Paul challenging him, and about they were struggling with him. Bill Clinton went to Florida and did some horrendous advertising against Paul, saying he was against Social Security and everything else.
Yeah, that's the usual.
Yeah, and that was the end of Paul.
Yeah.
Paul was very, very angry about that. Never forgave Clinton for that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It seemed like. Oh, we have 2 minutes left.
Sure.
What is the happiest, the funniest thing that you reported on?
Oh,
and I meant to talk to you about the elections that just happened, midterms, but I enjoy your stories.
I don't know what would be the happiest. Just breaking the biggest story.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess.
Well, let me ask you this question. We'll change it completely. 9/11. Where were you?
I was getting LASIK surgery in Boston.
Oh, no.
my wife had to drive in against the traffic, pick me up, and take me out to home. And I just lay in bed, listening to what was going on.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
Boston bombing, marathon bombing.
I was down with my dying mother-in-law so I never got to, right on the, right. I could have run if I'd been at the State House Bureau. I would have been running over to the bureau.
Yeah.
So I didn't get those big stories. I was always in the wrong
Carr.
place. Howie is an old friend of mine. I haven't seen much of him in recent years. He's kind of gone off the rails.
Okay.
I love Howie. I loved him very much. His daughter's a good.
Whitey Bulger.
That was one of the most interesting things of having the Senate president and at the height of his powers running state government, and Whitey Bulger running his world, his underground world, underworld figure, and writing that and how you wrote that and what you would say about it. It was a very, very tricky situation, and it was. And the word would come back if you linked the two of them. Whitey would be after you, and I did it a couple of times, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I did,
Oh, no kidding.
That Billy Bulger was, one of the problems from running for mayor in 1983 was he's got his brother, the dreaded Whitey.
Right. Listen, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it very much.
Sure, Dean. We didn't talk about the election. Got me talking about myself.
Maybe we'll do another show. And,
absolutely.
we can talk. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It was great.
It was great.